Like I've literally always been the kid ever since I was young. Like I want to be a firefighter. I'm going to go do that. Did it. I'm going to be an athlete. I'm going to go do that. Worked for years. Did it. Like I want to be a world champion. I'm going to focus on that. And then it's like checking boxes, right? Um, Thankfully, if 4 or 5 years ago, I started to realize after I had checked all of these boxes that it actually never made me feel more fulfilled. So thankfully I've had that life lesson prior to this. So I don't feel like my life is over in that sense. Like I'm done checking boxes and I can't progress anymore. Because I have already realized, like, before I even won my first world championship last year, I realized that it wouldn't make me any happier if I won. And it didn't. Like for a split moment, it's like, cool, I just hit a goal. And then as soon as it's over, it's like, okay, now I need the next one. Like that's literally how it feels. And so I think some people have thought I've been strange most of my life, because as soon as I hit a goal, like a lot of people go to celebrate, and I kind of just let it pass. Like I accept that it was a cool thing, and then like I don't go party or really celebrate that much, because it's just another day, right? Like any day that we have is a gift. So I can't remember where the verse is at, but it's actually in the Bible, where it's like, don't consider one day as more special than another. I need to
Romans
look that up.
14.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Paul is saying that whatever you do, do for the glory of God. You can host feasts and that be for the glory of God, or you can eat just vegetables and that be for the glory of God. And it talks about having one day as special, which is the Sabbath, or having every day as special. And he
Yep.
said, let each be convinced in their own mind.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think or I have also kind of applied that in my life in the way of like, for instance, I grew up in a family where we didn't really celebrate holidays that heavily, or even birthdays and things like that. Like we'd have a birthday celebration, but also I was always taught, like, you don't wait to tell someone that you love them only on a special day, or you don't wait to give someone a gift only on a special day. Like, yes, give them a gift on their birthday. That's awesome. But what about the rest of the days? Like, what if they don't get to that birthday? Um, so I think that's something that's been ingrained in me, is like, to me, that also means like, don't kind of like, a lot of Christians will, on Sunday they're holy, and then they're not on other days. And every day we're supposed to be living as a sacrifice, right? A self-sacrifice. We're supposed to be an example. And I fail at that all the time. But it doesn't mean that you don't try on days that aren't as special, right? Because every day is special. Every day is a gift. So that's definitely something that I've been trying to remember as well.
The wilderness, in a biblical sense, is an interesting phenomenon. So if we look all through the scriptures, Jesus went into the wilderness, then he could start his ministry. And even in Exodus, Moses went into the wilderness for 40 years. And you think, well, why on earth was he in the wilderness for 40 years? And it was because it took him 40 years of herding sheep in the wilderness to become the man that God wanted him to be, to then use him. So Moses. He was an arrogant Pharaoh's son, as you could imagine. And it took 40 years of breaking down, of Moses breaking down, and then God filling him up, so that he could then go to the point where, when God calls him to go to Israel, he says, no, don't choose someone else. Don't choose me. Every arrogance that Moses possessed beforehand dissipated. Even David was in the wilderness for 7 years, learning how to become a king, so that by age 30 he could go and be the king. So in terms of wilderness, we all go through it. And it's just whether or not we learn our lessons in it, so that we can then become the person that God needs us to be. Do you see any correlation in any of those stories with your own? Or is this just something different? Or is this completely transformative?
To be completely honest with you, I actually have thought about what you just said, but I have not viewed it in that light completely. But it is true, and it is something I've thought about, how a lot of the time in history, especially in scripture, we see this principle of like people are not ready for their next step. But to turn that on yourself when you feel like you're ready and you feel like you have been living a certain way to be ready, but then not be given that, maybe I am too arrogant. Like maybe I think I'm ready, but I'm not. That's where it's really tricky to me. And I've actually been studying a lot on the will of God. I'm sure if people can't tell yet, I'm a Christian. And so to me, I do think that we're designed and things are happening for a reason. I also believe and realize that this world's not perfect, and everything good comes from God is what's taught, right? So if you remove God, you have everything that is not good, because goodness is from him. Love is from him. And so because we live in a fallen world and he allows free will, bad things will happen. Sin will happen. Sickness will happen. And realizing that maybe I'm not ready for what he's preparing me for, that's hard when you feel like you are. Or you were already there and it kind of gets taken away. I don't really know what to do with that besides just trust, like the verse that you're saying in Proverbs. Like trusting with all your heart is so difficult, but I also think that's literally the only thing that keeps me going right now, because I've literally dreamt about being able to do what I do at the level that I do. I have literally, since I've been 5 or 6 years old, I've wanted to be a pro athlete. And I got there and I was doing well there and was able to make a living that way. And now that is not the case. And that's been my biggest dream since I was a kid. Like I literally don't know what to do now, to be completely honest with people, besides trust that my plan is not as good as God's plan. Which there's other scripture about, like how my ways are higher than your ways, right? And then also like man's wisdom is foolishness to God. And so like even though I can see this what seems to me like this perfect pathway in my life, that doesn't mean that it's actually the best thing for me. That's really hard for me to trust some days, but literally that faith and that trust is the only thing that's really getting me through, because I've done, at least on paper, as far as I can tell, like I've methodically gone through different things of like, how can Rylan heal and get better and get back to what he wants to do? And I still don't know. I've spent thousands of dollars. I've been to literally the supposed to be the best guy in the country for vocal cord dysfunction, where your vocal cords don't open so you can't breathe well, things like that. Like I've been to that guy and traveled to go see that guy, and I still didn't really get an answer. And so I've definitely stepped back into the mindset of like, well, maybe this is just not my time right now, and my job is to do everything I can do and then trust.